All right, we are rolling. Good morning. Good morning. Are you ready for this?
No.
Did I catch you off guard? Yeah, a little ASMR for some people this morning. All right. Well, it's Monday, February 10th, 2025, and we're going to get into the markets. So I'll let you kick off the fine print, and then we'll hop into the week that was.
Yep. Before we dive in, reminder: all the information shared during this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Always consult with an advisor for making investment decisions.
God, we're going to have to put that on the screen as like text as
That'd
well.
probably be better to do that anyway. Just to, the same exact thing every time. Just get the lawyer to approve it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll ask him about that. All right. Well, we had an interesting week in the markets last week. We had some wild swings again, but we ended the week S&P down 0.17. NASDAQ was basically flat. It was up a little bit. Dow was down half a point. Russell down 0.21. Commodities are where it gets really interesting. Gold is up over 2% last week. Silver was up 1.8. 10-year bond was up 0.45, and Bitcoin was down 4% last week. So, yeah, that's interesting. We had quite a week, the week of the 3rd. We had some strong gains in the energy sector, bolstered by the rising oil prices. We had some kind of froth in the technology sector. We had a lot of earnings come out last week, and it was sort of interesting because it was split. You would have, for example, a company like AMD who beat earnings, but their stock price fell. And then you had, who was it that basically missed earnings, but their stock price went up? I don't remember who that was, but it was like two.
Yeah, AMD, it popped up just 10-15%, and then I don't know. That's you can't trade. It's hard to trade around earnings. Options are generally your best play if you want to make a quick buck, but I mean, it's a gamble. It really is a gamble when you're buying short-term options on earnings. Unless you happen to be related to, say, Nancy Pelosi, and then and then it's like a sure thing.
As close to a sure thing as it can be. Yeah, but we had, there were it just all over the place. Treasury yields remained kind of stable. The other thing is the sentiment. This is so interesting that sort of sentiment, it's been said, dictates price, meaning that when people are really enthusiastic about the market, it's because the market tends to be going up. And then as soon as that course corrects, everybody all of a sudden gets, rain clouds over their head, and they start on the exact opposite of that.
Insert the FOMO chart.
Yeah.
That's what we need to put that in there. And you can really see that in crypto markets. Because again, it trades, we've said this a lot, you have to remember it trades 24/7, centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges, huge amounts of leverage. And so you kind of get these cycles that are very condensed relative to TradFi markets. And it does follow, in retrospect, the FOMO charts of, euphoria, depression.
Cyclical, yeah.
Yeah. And it is interesting to see, but sentiment still seems to be fairly strong, I would say. I don't think there's much of a change on that week on week. Nothing major.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the case. If we look at where we are on a year to date, it's kind of interesting to look at. Year to date, we've got the S&P up 2.5%, NASDAQ up 2.2%, Dow Jones up a little over 4%, and the Russell up 2.2%, about the same as the NASDAQ. And then you go to gold, up 8.99%. Silver is up 10.25% on the year. 10-year bond is up 1%, a little over 1% actually, and Bitcoin is up 4.23%. So very interesting to see that. We are coming up in the middle of February here, so we've got about 45 days or so of the year. That's wild that silver is up 10.25%. What do you attribute that to?
It probably industrial demand. You're going to have a lot of pull forward with the unknowns revolving around tariff policies. I would assume you're going to have a lot of pull forward, especially around electronics. And silver is really industrial. It's not like gold is. Historically, it traded 16-to-1 ratio.
You mean like a source of value?
It's not. I don't think silver. There's a lot of people out. It's the poor man's gold. generally speaking, for a lesser dollar amount, you can actually get something to hold. Whereas gold, for
Right.
like $100, you can hold like 2 ounces of silver or 3 ounces.
Yeah.
Where gold, it's like, tip of your fingernail or whatever now. But it's really an industrial metal. It's not really a monetary asset. That's the word that I was looking for. But again, you historically has always traded 16 to 1. So you would think it probably has some good upside. But I've never really liked silver. I've never really liked gold, except when, when our indicators, our momentum indicators, kick us into the gold trade at a small percentage of all the portfolios, generally does well. And we've seen that over the last year. But
yeah, we've
not
been
something
gold
we
for a
would.
while.
I would have thought we probably would have rolled out already, but it seems to be probably there's another. I would, if I had to guess, there's another 50% upside in gold before we come out of that trade. Yeah, I would guess. It's not guaranteed. It's based on what I'm seeing. But yeah, silver is more industrial demand. So if you have economic weakness, a lot of times you'll see gold go up and silver go down. Well, it's because nobody's buying the silver to produce, all the little things in this microphone and stuff.
Yeah.
And gold is used to cell phones to a much, much, much lesser extent. It's very interesting. And before we go further, did you watch the Super Bowl?
No, I did not.
That was embarrassing to watch. I didn't really root for either team. Kind of wanted to see the Chiefs win because it would have been the first time 3 in a row that somebody has won the Super Bowl 3 times in a row. And I kind of like
Well, they didn't get that memo.
those records.
That's
but
not what happened.
oh my God, I mean, it was brutal. It was literally like watching a peewee team play like a varsity football. I mean, that's how bad it was. It was
Take your word for it. I didn't watch it. I heard that they lost.
Embarrassingly bad. I mean,
that's I did see. The only reason I saw that the Eagles won is because my Twitter feed, for all those interested, is fairly nerdy, very financial. So there were some traders and analysts talking about the historical significance of Philadelphia teams winning and what happens in the aftermath in the markets. And it's like they go back to 2008 and all these other years. They're like, what's going to happen this time? Totally anecdotal, but it's interesting.
No, I mean there could be so many metaphors used off watching that game, but the Philadelphia Eagles obviously did their research. They had a plan. They knew exactly how to go after the offense of the Chiefs, and their defensive line is like the biggest in Super Bowl history. You're talking about them dudes, 340, 6'6", every one of them. I mean, they were basically like giants playing against giants. And so they had a good setup. They had done their research. They had a plan. They executed it flawlessly, and they knew exactly what to do. They weren't trying to go for anything impressive, throw, 80-yard passes. I think they did one, but you could draw a lot of life lessons from that.
Well, you should write some up and tell us next week.
Come up with a sermon.
Write an essay on the lessons you can learn from the Super Bowl. Present it to us next week. But, moving on from the sports world, looking at a couple of things that happened last week. Well, we had Trump. I'm going to pull this up here. Basically, Trump signed an executive order involving the creation of a sovereign wealth fund. I thought this was pretty interesting. I thought it might be something interesting to kind of volley back and forth about as far as what it might mean. Well, number one, what is it? And then what it might mean for use cases. Like, how could it be used by the United States? What does it matter that Trump and, I think Scott Bessent was there, which is the Treasury Secretary.
Bessent.
And then Bessent, whatever.
It's
and
Bessent.
then Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, was there.
Lutnick.
That's Lutnick. I know that one. I think they were both there.
That's a power move, by the way, people. When you're negotiating or you're trying to get something done, you make the person repeat themselves.
Okay, well,
we've known some people that did that. What was your name? Sorry, have we met?
That's a different. Yeah, that's a different.
Have we talked before?
Yeah. Well, you just threw me off
30 times.
Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Lutnick.
Yeah, Lutnick. They were both there when he signed that. So I'm assuming that I think they are both put in charge of that task.
And they're billionaires too, I believe.
Right. And they have history of
Wall Street
money
and real
management.
estate.
Yes. So why would Trump sign an executive order about the creation of a sovereign wealth fund?
He's not the first one. Louisiana Senator Kennedy talked about this during the Biden administration. Didn't get off the ground, and there's been several other senators talk about it. It's a big deal. As the wealthiest country on planet Earth and the most powerful nation the world has ever known, you would think this is something we would already have. But we've talked to some clients recently that brought up how they perceive the importance of it. It's very interesting when you really start digging in and seeing what does it mean. One thing I saw was that, like, just psychologically for the country, it automatically puts you in the mode of thinking about future generations, which is something that,
it's an investment.
Yeah. And it
in
starts,
future generation.
You're already starting to think about the future, leaving the country better off than you found it. That is a recipe for what they talk about being the golden age, which is kind of it's a term being used a lot now, but to begin with, it's kind of like almost like a cringe, corny type phrase. But, the more people talk about it, the more it gets ingrained in your psychology. And just how you were talking about sentiment. Sentiment follows the market, or the market follows sentiment. When you start shifting social sentiment as it pertains to future generations and, having more success than we have now, it can be a powerful tool. I just looked at using Grok, which is a artificial intelligence large language model, kind of call and response like ChatGPT, and just looked at, okay, what are some facts about sovereign wealth funds? What are some potential implications? It's very interesting. The social implications are the most interesting to me. We talked about the future generations, but also equity and distribution.
Yep.
Benefits from, we could even have universal dividends is one, which
Alaska does something similar to that
with the oil
with
revenue.
oil fund. Yep.
Yeah. Targeted investment in underserved communities. So instead of borrowing money to try to right some social wrongs that exist in certain areas, you very simply, if you have growth and earnings and dividends in the treasury, then you vote on how do we take instead of borrowing money to do it,
right?
How do we distribute some of this cash? It's very interesting. It really is. And it's like a giant 401k for the country.
That's right. Yeah. And so you have very similar kind of you could think of it very similarly to how you would think of it when you're knocking on the door of retirement. Our retirees that we talk to all the time, or people that are close to retirement, number one question, aside from, the number one question we'll talk about in a minute, but one of the questions they have is, how much could I expect to take from my nest egg? If I've saved all this money, how much could how much could I take? So that is something that we have conversations about that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but we generally have a threshold that we take. And if you look at a country who's already doing this, Norway has a sovereign wealth fund that has been very successful, and they have a law that they can only withdraw 4% per year. And so
it's like an endowment.
It's an endowment fund. That's exactly right. That's how you would look at it. And so it takes the guesswork out of it. Now, the downside to this is that you have to have people that are willing to follow this for all eternity for this to work. Because the minute somebody comes in and says, we're going to do an 8 or 10% withdrawal on this, then you've flipped the formula at that point. The other thing.
But even if that happens, at least it's coming out of equity and not debt.
That's true. That's
an accountability to that.
That's true. That's a pro, but I'm talking about in terms of the longevity of it. You have to have, just like with anybody that's going into a retirement account or that's starting income from their retirement portfolios, you have to have an amount that you can kind of sit with and that you can kind of, get used to. And you don't want to do a whole bunch of changing around. And if that's maybe a higher, there are times where we do maybe a higher distribution rate on a client who's not going to take for very long from it. And that's fine because the portfolio has time to recover. But if you're going to use it for things like this, or for infrastructure or whatever you want to spend it on, obviously it's better to have the sovereign wealth fund. You want to get growth. You're able to invest in companies. There was talk about TikTok possibly being the first investment with the sovereign wealth fund.
Infrastructure projects, toll roads, dams,
right.
Solar, wind, that's really fallen out of public favor. But, you can do things that generate revenue, and instead of using nonsense like this USAID stuff that's just an opaque, really money laundering scheme. I'm sorry, but if you look at the data, it is what it is. You can't, the numbers don't lie. Like, I don't care about what the news says. Read the data they've uncovered, and it's like, wow, okay, now we know how politicians go in there with a $50,000 in student loan debt, and in 20 years they're worth like $400 gajillion, magically off a $200,000 a year salary.
Well, there's been no desire to track the money down. If anybody in a private business starts a business and doesn't track their inflow or outflow, I mean, it's not even a business, a personal. If you start up a household and you don't track your income and your outflow, and you just continue to spend and spend and spend into oblivion, and you can't tell, somebody gives you $1,000, where that $1,000 went. You can find 200 of it shoved in the couch cushions, but you don't know where the other 800 went. I mean, this is what is happening in real time. We're seeing that.
Yeah.
And whatever you want to say about Elon Musk, and there's a bunch of people that have been throwing words like robber baron and things out that are just so hyperbolic. I mean, it's like he's the wealthiest man in the world. Why on earth?
Who doesn't own a home? He doesn't even own a home. He drives a Model 3, I think.
I don't know what he drives.
I
know he lives in a tiny little 50,
he doesn't care about
500 square
foot. It's so funny. I wonder how much he's getting paid. Okay, really?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's losing money by being so negative press attention.
I think it's a different mindset, and I'm not sure what the problem is that people have with it about just figuring out where the money is. I mean, there's nothing. The access that they have is read only. They've said that several times. They're just
tracking
Secretary of Treasury.
Point A. It's just like our CPA looking at the books, point A to point B.
Right.
She's not getting debit cards.
Right.
They
don't have any control over stopping it, but at least it's bringing it to light, because the spending that's going on, we've known for a long time, is insane. I mean, that's why we have as much debt as we have. And so there was an interview a while back, a few years ago, actually, with Jon Stewart.
That was last year. I believe that was last year with the Undersecretary of Defense.
Yeah.
I think that was last year.
That was last year? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's asking her about an audit. Why can't the Defense Department pass an audit?
You need to link that.
And she just is so flippant about it. She doesn't, it doesn't matter. We don't have an audit because we don't have a way to count our inventory. That's why we don't have an audit. And he's just like, but you have a budget of X amount of dollars, and you don't know where X amount of dollars went. It's the same with the Ukraine stuff.
I guarantee if you went Fort Moore, previously Fort Benning, is near 5 miles that way, if that.
Yeah.
And I guarantee if we walked into where they store the bombs or the tanks, they'd have an inventory list, and they know where every single bullet is. Because right here on the Chattahoochee, the guy that does the scuba diving, that got real popular doing the
YouTube videos.
Yeah, YouTube videos, finding it huge, millions and millions of views. Well, then that happens right here this way, not even 1 mile, if that. Our office in Columbus is actually on the river. And if he finds unexploded ordnances or dummy rounds from maybe flooding that's occurred since World War II, because the fort is gigantic. It's more than half of Muskogee County,
right?
And so the police come, the bomb squads come. They try to account for it. Where did it come from? How did it get there? They're trying to see if there's any serial numbers or anything. They know. The actual soldiers and the people in charge of inventory know what's up. I mean, you worked at the base in college.
I didn't have any real role.
Didn't you? You did something with night vision. Did they just lose night vision goggles?
Oh no, that was very carefully inventoried.
Yeah.
So it's the sovereign wealth fund. Going back to that is a super transparent way, and these the Treasury Secretary and the Commerce Secretary are even talking about having all the spending put on blockchain, which is going to be like the most transparent way you could do it, because then everything is public. And so I would be interested to see what potential outcomes this could have, because you also have to, this is the interesting thing about it. You have to have a future government that is willing to participate in this, or it's not going to work. It cannot just be Trump for the next 4 years.
That's right. Well, if they make it transparent, they're forced to do it. Because
I mean, you could say that, but
if it's on blockchain, you can't. You can't hide anything. If they stop, but then they'd have to justify why they're stopping, and the only way to say is because somebody's stealing something. But so back to the USAID, how could a sovereign wealth fund come in and change this? Well, if we want to be generous and we have a sovereign wealth fund and everything is tracked and transparent, then you can take $1 billion and send it to wherever, and everybody knows it, everybody sees it, everybody sees who gets it. Instead of this, I'm going to take $1 billion to send to Uganda, which so happens to send, $500 million to the Clinton Foundation, which then sends $200 million to some publishers, which then send Chelsea Clinton $50 million.
For her wedding, yeah.
You know, or so, but it's just ridiculous. And then they were saying, well, you know, we don't need people like Elon Musk in charge of FAA. Well, he's not in charge of it, but they want to audit the systems. The dude can parallel park a 300-foot tall rocket, and you're saying we don't want him anywhere near the FAA. It's funny, but all this aside,
well, a lot of those journalists, and it's now coming out that they were funded through USAID.
So of course you're gonna like crap on other people because you're getting paid to do it.
The first time Politico and BBC missed payroll, and they're like, why are these two correlated?
Momentum Wealth Management never received a dime
of
USAID money.
Know how to go about doing that. But is this something, sovereign wealth fund, if you're thinking about a fund which invests in, you know, U.S. production, I would assume that they would maybe have some global diversification in there, depending on who's managing it. I wouldn't think it would be very high. There's some fixed income tools, maybe. The Social Security, Social Security fund now is mainly treasuries, is what it is. And so
IOUs.
When you have something like a cost of living adjustment, it's not because the return was so great that you're forcing a cost of living adjustment.
Because they've devalued the currency that they're obligated to pay you vis-a-vis.
So they're doing it with debt.
Yes.
And so the way that this would shift under a sovereign wealth plan, it could be one piece to making Social Security solvent again. I mean, there's going to be it's not going to be instant.
No, it would be instant. All you have to do,
it would be instant if you took a giant payment and put it up front into the Social Security.
You don't have to do that. This is what you do. So we're sitting on the largest proven reserves of oil and natural gas on planet Earth, or almost. It's in the top 3. All right. Immediately, all federal lands are transferred to the ownership of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Boom. Done.
Well, I mean,
now you're holding. It's like me and you going and buying $3 trillion worth of real estate. Now we have the asset, and that asset can produce revenue. Vis-a-vis.
Yeah, but it's not going to be instant. There's going to have to be.
It doesn't have to necessarily be instant, because all you need is a little.
Well,
it's instant in that the asset side of the balance. If we need an extra $5 trillion to make Social Security solvent.
Well, that's
boom. We got it.
That's also a conversation they're having, which is that they're about to monetize. I sent a new screenshot of that over the weekend. They're about to monetize the other side of the balance sheet, and you know what that means. I don't know.
I don't see that you. Oh, wait a minute.
But the U.S. government has a lot of gold, and so if that's what they're talking about,
I see this now. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Yep.
Then that could be interesting as well, because the gold that the government holds is still valued according to
$24 or something,
70s, like 1970s valuations.
$40, something like that.
Yeah. So if they're not going to monetize that side of the balance sheet,
that's a $500 billion now.
So what do they do with that? That's the question.
Well, they get it back from the feds, the Federal Reserve, that is.
If they have it.
If they have it.
They'll find out in the audit, I guess.
And they can they'll monetize it, number one, by saying that's our gold and it's not valued at $42. It's valued at $3,000 or an ounce. And then they turn it around and they give it to BlackRock or Van Eck, who in turn digitize it vis-a-vis redeemable ETF shares. And it's a part of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And they can rebalance and hold the day.
ETFs are going to go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got to be intelligent about this stuff.
It's one part, I think, to maybe a solution about Social Security.
And it could be increased taxes too. You could take 1% employment tax and put into the fund.
The payroll taxes.
Yeah, because right now, and we talk about this a lot with retirees that have a legitimate concern over the solvency. What is wrong with my speaking today?
Of Social Security.
I want to keep putting R's in things. The solvency of Social Security. And that impacts when they decide to take it, because they don't want to miss out on what they are rightfully entitled to. And
that's what I was going to say is the number one question we get.
Yeah.
Is Social Security. When do I take it? How long do I have to? People want to take it immediately.
Yeah.
And there are cases where that makes sense, namely if you're not in great health, that may make sense to take at 62. But for the majority of people, waiting until full retirement age, and I think another solution, perhaps in addition to maybe a sovereign wealth fund and increase a little bit on payroll taxes, is maybe delaying retirement age for younger generations. I don't see a huge deal with that, but
because really that's what it's meant for is old age. And since we're living so much longer, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem waiting.
Yeah. It would have to be done in a certain way.
It wouldn't affect us because we're not planning for retirement now. Now, if you do that for people at 60 years old, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's
an immoral proposition.
So it could be solved a couple different ways, but it certainly could help fund Social Security as a sovereign wealth fund if it's done correctly. And I think to your point, the people that Trump has brought in, and even Trump himself, he's no stranger to investments. I think that they have a good shot. They're supposed to come up with a plan within 90 days, and this is supposed to be implemented within the next 12 months. So I would be really interested to see what happens, because this is like almost game changer for the solvency of the United States. I mean, if you look at countries that are doing this currently, Norway being the best example of it, and theirs is mostly provided by oil and gas revenue.
Even though they only use hydroelectric.
Yeah,
because they're smart. They have all these gorges and fords and all these things that they dam up and use hydroelectric on, and they're not worried about the fishes. And and then in turn they have the huge reserves of oil and gas that they sell to people that need that dense energy, and it can be easily transported. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, and obviously the scale is different. We're not under the impression that Norway is the exact same as the U.S., but
if they can do it, we
have
can
to
do
be. Saudi Arabia has.
You're talking about throwing a Molotov cocktail into the business cycle, and instead of allowing whoever sits at the board of the Federal Reserve to determine what happens in the business cycle vis-a-vis interest rates, which is not a free market approach. They're deciding what happens. Rates should go up. I don't know. Maybe they should go down. With no respect to what happens now, you're having a situation to where if you have a part of the sovereign wealth fund that is continuously purchasing index funds, for instance, now you're creating a stabilizing effect that more properly reflects. I cannot. Is it this monster drink? Is it? I'm getting tongue tied. That more properly reflects the growth of the economy instead of ups and downs being driven by the Federal Reserve.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
That would have to be revisiting the Federal Reserve's mandate, and I would be interested to see if that's an area that Trump wants to venture into.
Would you see Ron Paul? Looks like he's going to get his chance.
That is going to be hilarious if that happens. That is going to be hilarious. I'd be interested to see if that works too. It seems like Elon has sort of a very defined approach to what he wants to do. And you kind of saw some back and forth with Vivek a couple of weeks ago, and he actually left the Department of Government Efficiency. Sorry, not inefficiency. The Department of Government Efficiency. And it was apparently because they kind of butted heads over how it should be done. So Elon's a pretty strong personality. I'd be interested to see if it works. I hope it does. I hope it does work out because, yeah, Ron Paul is definitely someone you want in there doing that. Speaking from the point of, I don't know if I would call myself a libertarian. I would have before this election cycle called myself a libertarian, but I think they went crazy this election cycle.
It's hard to have a socialist or something be the libertarian thing. It just doesn't compute. But yeah, it looks like Ramaswamy wanted to focus more on the constitutional aspect with Musk focusing more on technology. It's rough, man. I think
that technology, I think that maybe both of the approaches could work, but technology definitely has to be first. Yeah, because you have to have a way to find it.
That's it. Boom. Bingo.
You have to find it. And then once you find it, then you can figure out what happens.
You can stick the lawyers on them once you find it. Yeah.
But you have to find it. And you have to find it in a transparent way, which I think he's doing. I'm not sure why he's coming against so much flack in the media and other than them just to talk about it. I don't understand the concept of being against just finding the money. Like where is the money?
The people we want to do. Obviously, the people that are pissed about it are the ones getting the money. It's common sense.
I guess so. I don't know. Even there's a lot of even like independent journalists that are up in arms about it, and I wouldn't expect that they would be recipients of USAID.
No, but their family members probably work at some NGO that just so happens to get $1 million a year contract to study, putting nail polish on rats or something.
Yeah, maybe.
They come up with all kind of crazy stuff. I have no video over it.
Instagram video yesterday of this guy. He's like sitting at the table and he's talking about how he's regretting his vote. He takes his Make America Great hat, Make America Great Again hat off. And he puts it on the table. I'm done. I'm already reconsidering my vote. I used to work for the government, and we were funded by USAID, and we were tasked with finding out if the wheels on the bus really did go round and round and round. And now we can't do that. Who will ever know if the wheels can go round and round?
It's like the Epstein list. One of those senators that was at the head of the committee, Dick Durbin.
Durbin, yeah.
He's got the flight logs, and he won't
Oh,
release
does
it.
he?
Yeah.
Well, I saw he was going to release it.
He didn't.
Well, they said he was.
Only one reason why he would not release that list.
Well, I would imagine.
And I'm just going to leave it to the imagination as to why he would not do it. I mean, it's common sense. It's common sense. Well, let us move on here. Very interesting things going on, but this coming up, this week's coming economic events. We're looking at why do you have Brazil's inflation rate on here?
That is
sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
I caught up in you could disregard that.
Okay.
We're not going to talk about that.
The U.S. inflation data coming Wednesday.
U.S. CPI on Wednesday, along with the inflation rate as well, coming on Wednesday. The core PPI, is on Thursday.
No, PPI, not core.
Yeah, core PPI.
Falling down on the job with these listings. Well, if you're interested,
I'm getting them from different sources.
The Brazilian inflation rate is due, providing insights into inflationary trends in Latin America's largest economy. So we'll keep our eyes on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the important stuff's coming in for the Fed. Kind of give us a hint. Are we going to cut in March? Or are we not?
Yeah.
Let's see.
And then we've got some initial jobless claims on Thursday as well. And then on Friday, we've got retail sales and actually inventories as well comes out on Friday.
McDonald's, Coke, Shopify, Cisco, Robinhood, all important companies for their respective sectors to give a hint on economic activity.
Are you talking about earnings?
Earnings, yeah. McDonald's was down. There was today, so they disappointed. But Coke is not yet reported, I don't believe. Shopify, that's going to be an interesting one to see. Cisco, Robinhood.
Market's pretty hot right now. You got energy up about 2%.
Yeah, but McDonald's was down. Mickey D's.
Yeah, maybe so. Tesla's
flat. Now they're up. Look at that. There we go. See what I'm saying? They miss earnings. They go down. Now they're up.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, we got down pre-market.
Yeah, it's interesting every time the market.
I like McDonald's. It's one of my guilty pleasures.
Is it?
Taco Bell too. But Arby's is the love of my life for fast food, I would think. Well, no, Culver's. We had some Culver's in, where were we at, Atlanta?
Wow, you really liked that, huh?
I did. That was a great burger.
Monday.com we use here as a firm. They beat earnings today up 30%. My Lord.
Did you buy calls on it?
No, didn't buy calls on it. Yeah, so earnings season still going out. Yeah, it's all interesting to look at that stuff. Any parting thoughts from you when we wrap it up here? Anything you've talked about during the week with somebody that may help somebody else, or any kind of comments about?
Well, I think the biggest thing would be, we've had a lot of discussions about when to take Social Security. We've had some discussions on a few different other things revolving around retirement. I would just think if you're thinking about taking Social Security and you're not yet at full retirement age, at least let's get past the summer, because we have a few big items on the docket at the federal government. We have the new tax law that's going to be negotiated. There has been talk about easing the taxation on Social Security and possibly eliminating it altogether for the benefits.
Yeah, isn't that what he said? Didn't he say eliminating it?
Yeah, but I don't know if it was going to be a part of this tax bill or a future one.
So
but
press secretary was like running off a list of it last week, and she was talking about, was that one of them she talked about?
It may have been.
She was talking about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. And I think Social Security was one of them they put in there.
So that could, if you're someone who maybe for health reasons or for other reasons that are not just trying to look at the math of what gets you the most Social Security, that could help reinforce the decision to take Social Security before full retirement age if you're not going to be taxed on it, because that's a de facto bump. On the other hand, knowing that you're going to have a guaranteed 8% growth per year for each year you delay your full benefit from 67 to 70.
That's right.
Now you're getting guaranteed 8% growth on a benefit that is also not taxed. That's like getting a bump in your Roth IRA that you weren't expecting. So, and then that gives you what you need, an effective back of napkin 12.5%, 13% return if you're going to be paying taxes on it. So that could also give you encouragement to wait. So we have that. We also have things going on, for instance, with sovereign wealth fund, with tariff policy, and with interest rates. So all of these things can come in to really kind of from the back door start informing your decision to wait or not to wait for Social Security. So if the economy continuously is improving, like we are seeing, if interest rates start to come down, specifically the 10-year Treasury, watch that. That's the important one. then your accounts may be going up in value to the point to where you can start taking more income from those and push off Social Security a little bit longer. So that's really the thing that we've been, because there's some uncertainty. It's like, I don't know what's going to go on. I want to take Social Security, which is it's legitimate. That is a legitimate concern. So we're just encouraging, let's get past a few of these policy changes and see how they affect you. And then you be a little bit more clear-eyed about which decision you make.
Right.
That's what I would say the biggest thing, take away from a bunch of meetings we had last week on that conversation. Probably had a dozen just talking about Social Security.
Talk to a financial advisor about that.
No, talk to us.
Yeah, well,
talk to any financial advisor.
If you have your own financial advisor, talk to your financial advisor about it. They should be helping you out with these. But if you want to,
which we have
a conversation
clients
with us,
in 11 states, so it doesn't matter which state you're in. Be more than happy to hop on a Zoom and talk with you, as long as you're a U.S. citizen or a resident of the U.S. And you can even live internationally as long as you keep your U.S. citizenship, because it makes it easier for us if you keep your U.S. citizenship.
Yeah, important conversation to have for sure, especially about retirees and getting close to that, and making the most out of Social Security. You've paid into it. Why wouldn't you want to make the most out of it? Anyway, I think that's it for us. We'll wrap it up here at 36 minute mark. Now
here's a topic
on me that I can't.
Yeah, I know. Here's a parting thought. I bought a home warranty. You ever had one of those?
No.
Okay, I did it. I bit the bullet last year and did it. I've been every meeting. We have so many meetings during this time of the year that I kind of start off the meeting on. Keep a rhythm, right? And it's always great
if you're a client and you haven't done the annual check-in, go ahead and schedule that.
Yes, very important.
Calendar.
Talk about the weather. It's just a great way to break the ice. And I've been complaining about. Oh, y'all were talking about me, huh?
I told Mary Sarah I was going to start a drinking game.
The bingo card.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting talk. So I've been complaining about the white stuff in the sky and the hard water.
Yes.
Right. It's cold. Us in the South aren't used to this. So it started warming up. Was great. Air conditioner upstairs broke.
And you bought a home warranty.
There we go.
Did it fix it?
Well, they're coming tomorrow.
Hey, there you go. A win.
So I know Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman and those people don't like.
Well, you have to do the cost benefit analysis. How much did you pay for it versus how much it would have cost to fix it?
Yeah, I mean,
next
got
week,
a lot of
with your report on the Super Bowl, you can tell us next week.
I will. I'll do the cost benefit analysis on what I've paid for the home warranty so far and how much money it saved me.
We'll look forward to something to look forward to. All right, well, we'll wrap it up here. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll be back with another episode. Thanks for joining us this week, and have a great week.
Like the video, unlike it, dislike it. Just don't be mean.
No, don't dislike it.
Well,
I think you can't dislike it anymore.
It helps algorithms, even if. No, I think you can.
I don't know. I don't know anything.
Just like the video and share it and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.